Across centuries, whispers claimed the dead rose from their graves, hungry for blood. Villages lived in fear. Corpses were staked and burned, and families tore apart their own dead to stop an ancient curse. These are not just legends. These are real cases, recorded in history, and more terrifying than any tale of fiction. Tonight, we uncover the dark truth behind the vampire myth. But before we descend into the shadows, make sure you subscribe to the Silent Lodge. Like this video, share it with fellow seekers of the unknown, and leave a comment below, if you dare. The word vampire conjures images of pale figures, blood-soaked fangs, and endless nights. But the idea of creatures feeding on life is far older than Gothic novels or Hollywood films. Nearly every culture holds some form of blood-drinking entity, from the Strigoi of Romania to the Aswang of the Philippines to the Lamiai of ancient Greece. Yet it was in Eastern Europe that the modern vampire legend took its most chilling form. In the 17th and 18th centuries, waves of disease swept through Europe. Tuberculosis, cholera, and the plague devastated families. Without medical knowledge, people looked for answers in the supernatural. When one family member died, it wasn't uncommon for others to follow soon after. Grief-stricken communities believed the dead had returned to feed on the living. To stop them, villagers exhumed bodies, searching for signs of vampirism. What they found must have seemed convincing. Corpses often appeared bloated, with blood at the mouth. Nails and hair seemed longer, as though the dead were still growing. In truth, these were natural processes of decomposition. But to terrified villagers, they were undeniable proof. The dead were feeding, and they had to be stopped. These fears were not whispers in the dark. They were recorded by priests, doctors, and government officials. Entire communities became gripped in vampire panics, and some of the most infamous cases would echo across history, forever binding folklore with horror. Our first begins in a small Serbian village in the year 1725. Our journey begins in the small village of Kisilova, Serbia, in 1725. Here, a man named Petar Blagojevich died suddenly. His burial should have marked the end of his story. Instead, it ignited one of the most terrifying vampire panics ever recorded. Within days of his death, villagers claimed Blagojevich had returned from the grave. They said he appeared at night, demanding food from his wife. When she refused, he left, and she too was found dead the next morning. Over the following week, 9 more villagers mysteriously perished, each claiming on their deathbed that Blagojevich had attacked them in the night. Panic gripped the town. The villagers appealed to their local authorities, desperate to end the terror. When officials exhumed Blagojevich's body, they reported a shocking sight. His corpse was unnaturally preserved, his skin fresh, and traces of blood stained his lips. To the villagers, this was undeniable proof. Blagojevich was a vampire. They drove a stake through his chest, burned the body, and believed they had finally ended the curse. This event was so widely documented that it spread across Europe, fueling the vampire hysteria of the 18th century. But Blagojevich was only the beginning. Just 1 year later, in the nearby village of Medvedja, another case shook the region, and this one became even more infamous. The story of Arnold Paole. Paole was a soldier who claimed he had once been attacked by a vampire while serving abroad. He told neighbors that he had eaten earth from the vampire's grave and smeared himself with its blood to break the curse. Soon after returning home, Paole died in an accident. Yet within weeks, villagers reported seeing him wandering at night. Livestock were found drained of blood. Several neighbors fell ill and died, claiming Paole had visited them in their final hours. Authorities eventually exhumed Paole's body and discovered, once again, What they believed were signs of vampirism. His body was preserved, with blood at the mouth. They drove a stake through his heart, and to be certain, burned his remains. But the panic didn't end there. Months later, others in the village began to die, and further exhumations revealed more corpses thought to be vampires. The hysteria spread like wildfire. By now, vampire fever had become unstoppable. Reports spread across Europe, reaching scholars, clergy, and even emperors. Soon, the New World would experience its own vampire panic, one that would haunt a quiet town in Rhode Island. This was the case of Mercy Brown. Our next case takes us far from Eastern Europe to the quiet hills of Exeter, Rhode Island, in the year 1892. Here, a young woman named Mercy Brown became the center of America's most infamous vampire panic. Mercy was the daughter of George Brown, a local farmer. His family had already been devastated by tuberculosis, known at the time as consumption. George's wife and one daughter had died, and when Mercy and her brother Edwin fell ill, the community began whispering. They believed that someone already dead in the Brown family was feeding on the living. In March of 1892, townsfolk and George Brown himself exhumed the bodies of his family. The mother and older daughter were reduced to bone, but Mercy, who had been buried only 2 months before, was found preserved in the frozen ground. Her heart still contained blood. To the villagers, this was proof of vampirism. They cut out her heart and liver, burned them on a stone, and mixed the ashes into a potion. This grim remedy was given to her brother Edwin, who was believed to be under her curse. But it was too late. Edwin died soon after. The case of Mercy Brown became infamous, attracting journalists and even medical researchers of the time. To modern science, her preservation was simply the result of cold weather. But to her neighbors, it was the final proof that vampires were real, even in the heart of America. Nearly 2 centuries later, on the other side of the Atlantic, whispers of a vampire would return once more, but this time in the middle of London. In the 1970s, the Highgate Cemetery in North London became the stage for one of the strangest vampire legends of modern times. Residents reported sightings of a tall, dark figure with glowing red eyes drifting among the tombs. Animals were discovered dead, drained of blood. Panic spread, and the press seized on the sensational story. A vampire haunting the heart of London. The case escalated when self-proclaimed vampire hunters invaded the cemetery, some even attempting to dig up graves in search of the monster. Crowds gathered at night, hoping for a glimpse of the supernatural. While no vampire was ever found, the Highgate case became a media spectacle, an urban legend blending Gothic imagination with modern obsession. From Serbia to Rhode Island, from forgotten villages to bustling cities, the vampire legend refuses to die. But why does it hold us so tightly? The answer lies not just in history, but in the human mind itself. Why did entire communities believe so deeply in vampires? The answer lies in fear. For centuries, death was sudden, cruel, and unexplained. Tuberculosis, plague, cholera, these diseases spread invisibly, wiping out families one by one. Lacking science, people sought explanations in the supernatural. The vampire became a vessel for their terror, a name to give the unknown. Today, we understand the natural processes that once convinced people the dead were alive. Decomposition can cause bodies to appear fresh, skin to shrink, and blood to pool. A corpse may look as though it has grown new nails or sprouted hair. Even the presence of blood around the mouth is nothing more than internal fluids rising after death. Yet to villagers centuries ago, these signs proved the dead were feeding on the living. The vampire legend is more than superstition. It is a reflection of humanity itself, our fear of death, our longing for immortality, and our unease with the mysteries of the body. To some, the vampire is a monster. To others, it is a metaphor for greed, lust, or power. And for modern subcultures, the idea of vampirism has become an identity, a lifestyle, or even a fascination with the forbidden. Though the vampire panics of the past are long gone, the myth continues to thrive. From novels to films, from folklore to urban legends, the vampire refuses to fade. It adapts with every generation, sometimes terrifying, sometimes romantic, but always lurking in the shadows of our imagination. So, were these creatures ever truly real? Or were they born from the fears of people desperate to make sense of tragedy? The truth may never be clear, but one thing is certain: the legend of the vampire is eternal. As long as humans fear the dark, the vampire will remain with us, waiting in silence. If you've enjoyed this journey into the shadows, join us here at the Silent Lodge. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with those who dare to seek the truth behind the myths. And in the comments below, tell us, which vampire legend do you believe still holds the most terrifying truth?